Have you ever noticed how the world never stops talking, yet says nothing that truly matters? Every sound, every scroll, every plan keeps you chasing something that doesn't quiet the noise inside. But what if the silence you fear is the doorway you've been avoiding? What if peace isn't something you find in others, but something you build in yourself alone, in the quiet, where no one's watching? Stay until the end, because what you'll discover in stillness might change how you see strength forever. There was a moment I remember vividly, one of those nights, when the world felt both too quiet and too loud. The room was still, but my thoughts screamed. I scrolled through endless feeds, faces, lives that seemed brighter, fuller, louder than mine. Everyone looked alive, moving somewhere. I felt motionless, like standing in a city after the lights go out, listening to the echo of a life that used to be loud. It was in that silence I first asked myself a question that changed everything. What if this emptiness isn't the end, but the beginning? We spend so much of our lives running from quiet, turning up the music, filling the calendar, staying busy just to avoid that heavy stillness that creeps in when the world pauses. We tell ourselves that silence means something's wrong with us, that if we're not surrounded by people, we're failing at life. But I started to see it differently. Maybe the noise had been my disguise. Maybe the crowd had been a cage, and the silence was the sound of the door unlocking. There's a strange kind of fear that rises when the world stops demanding your attention. You begin to hear your own thoughts again, raw, unfiltered, uncomfortably honest. They tell you truths you've been avoiding. They remind you of dreams you've postponed. And if you're brave enough to listen, that's when the transformation begins. Because silence doesn't destroy you, it strips away the lies you've built around yourself. That's what the Stoics understood long before the world got this loud. Marcus Aurelius wrote that nowhere can man find a more peaceful retreat than within his own soul. But to reach that place, you have to walk through the noise. You have to endure the loneliness that comes before clarity. I learned that peace doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It arrives quietly, almost unnoticeably, like dawn sneaking into a dark room. The truth is, stillness is not for the faint-hearted. It demands that you sit face to face with every part of yourself, the insecurities, the guilt, the regrets, and choose not to look away. Most people won't do it. They'll drown it out with distraction and call it happiness. But if you can endure that silence long enough, something extraordinary happens. You stop needing the world to make sense. You start becoming the person who does. So before we begin, take this as an invitation, not to escape your noise, but to confront it. To stand still in the storm until you can hear your own voice again. Because the world doesn't need more people who are loud. It needs more people who are steady. If what you're about to hear speaks to you, subscribe to this channel not for me, but for yourself. So you'll never miss the next lesson that might remind you who you truly are beneath the noise. Now tell me if you had to choose right now. A. Keep running from silence, hoping the world fills it for you. B. Face the quiet and let it teach you who you are. Comment your answer below. When I first began sitting in silence, I expected peace. Instead, I met chaos. My mind rebelled against stillness like a caged animal. It clawed for distraction. It replayed old arguments, relived regrets I thought I'd buried. I realized that silence doesn't calm you at first. It confronts you. It drags every unhealed thought to the surface and dares you to face it. I wanted to run, to grab my phone, to fill the air with anything. Something that would drown out the noise inside my head. But each time I resisted, I saw how much power I had been giving away to distraction. Every notification, every conversation, every pointless scroll had been a small escape from myself. And I was addicted to it. That was the first lesson I learned. The mind cannot heal while it's in motion. I used to believe that thinking more meant understanding more, but the Stoics taught the opposite. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind, when distracted, loses its grasp on truth. I began to see how constant movement was just my way of avoiding what hurt. Like muddy water, my mind needed time to settle before I could see what lay beneath. And when it did, the reflections weren't flattering. I saw how often I'd spoken just to fill silence, acted out of impulse instead of intention, chased validation because I was terrified of being unseen. So I started small, 10 minutes each morning. No music, no screen, no plan. Just me and my thoughts. At first it was unbearable. I would sit there counting seconds, waiting for permission to leave my own company. But somewhere in that discomfort, a shift began. My thoughts slowed. The noise softened. Beneath the chaos, I found something I hadn't felt in years: clarity. It didn't shout. It whispered. It told me which worries were illusions, which desires were distractions, and which paths I had been too afraid to walk. That silence became my teacher. It taught me that not every reaction deserves my energy, that some truths only reveal themselves when I stop demanding answers, and that peace isn't the absence of struggle, but the discipline to pause before responding to it. For the first time, I began to act, not react. I noticed how easily people around me were controlled by noise. Arguments on screens, opinions of strangers, endless debates that changed nothing. I used to be one of them. But now, when others rushed to speak, I listened. When they shouted, I stayed still. And in that stillness, I felt stronger than ever. Silence is not empty, it's full of information. Every pause carries meaning. Every quiet moment reflects the state of your mind. The Stoics understood that self-control begins here, in your ability to sit alone with your thoughts without panic, to watch your emotions rise and fall without letting them drive you. Epictetus once told his students, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." At the time, I didn't understand, but now I do. When you choose silence in a world that fears it, people will misunderstand you. They'll call you distant, strange, detached. But what they see as withdrawal is actually mastery, the kind that doesn't need to prove itself. There's a quiet confidence that grows when you stop needing noise to feel alive. It's the strength of a soldier who stands firm in chaos. It's the serenity of the sea after the storm. That calm doesn't come from the world treating you kindly. It comes from you treating your mind wisely. And so I kept sitting. 10 minutes turned into 20, then an hour. It became a ritual, not an escape. The silence that once scared me became a sanctuary. Each day, I could feel the storm within me quieting. The same world that once overwhelmed me now felt slower, clearer, almost peaceful. Because once you learn to master your mind in stillness, the world can no longer control you with its noise. That's the second truth I learned on this journey, that silence doesn't weaken you. It trains you. It's the weight room of the soul where unseen strength is built. The longer you stay, the stronger you become. And one day, when the world throws chaos at you again, you'll realize you don't need to run anymore. The storm is outside. The calm is within. There came a time when silence began to change me in ways I didn't expect. It wasn't just a tool for focus anymore, it became a mirror. One that reflected the truth of my connections. I started noticing how many of my conversations were built on noise, not meaning. How often we talk just to fill the air, to avoid the discomfort of saying nothing. I began to see that much of what I once called friendship was merely shared distraction. We bonded over complaints, over gossip, over things that dissolved the moment the noise stopped. And when I stopped participating, those connections vanished. At first, that disappearance hurt. It felt like rejection. But in time, I realized it was revelation. Silence had begun to filter my world. It was like pruning a tree. I didn't cut people off because I stopped caring. I simply stopped pretending. When you no longer chase validation, you discover who truly stands with you. Most people aren't comfortable around depth. They want conversation, not connection. They want entertainment, not understanding. But once your mind grows still, the shallow can no longer hold you. You crave truth, not small talk. Meaning, not noise. That shift doesn't make you better than others, it makes you more honest with yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you should stand straight, not be held straight. I used to lean on others for balance, thinking that companionship meant safety. But what I didn't realize was that leaning too much made me fragile. When those people left, I fell. It was only when I learned to stand on my own, grounded in my own values, that I understood what real stability meant. Solitude became my foundation, not my weakness. It taught me that being alone is not the same as being lonely. One is emptiness. The other is space for growth, for thought, for becoming. There was one evening that made this truth undeniable. I had been walking home under a fading sky, the city lights flickering on one by one. My phone was silent, no messages waiting, no plans to rush toward. The air was cool, the streets half empty. For the first time, I didn't reach for anything. I just walked. And in that moment, I felt something rare, a sense of completeness that had nothing to do with anyone else. The silence wasn't heavy. It was clean. It was like breathing after years of holding my breath. That night I understood, solitude is not a punishment, it's a purification. It strips away what's false so something real can grow. The friendships that remain after that process are the ones rooted in truth. The rest fade quietly, and that's how it should be. Because peace cannot coexist with pretense. When you value depth, you lose the shallow, and that is not loss, it's progress. In a world obsessed with connection, solitude will feel like rebellion. But maybe that's exactly what it is. Rebellion against the superficial, the performative, the constant need to be seen. Silence teaches you to see yourself clearly. And once you do, you'll never again beg to be seen by others. There was a strange calm that came after the noise faded, a kind of stillness that didn't feel lonely anymore, just deliberate. I stopped chasing conversations that drained me, stopped explaining myself to people who were never really listening. The silence that once felt like exile had turned into a gatekeeper, guarding my peace. I began to see how most of life's chaos doesn't come from the world, but from the people we let too close. We invite noise disguised as friendship, drama disguised as care, and then wonder why we can't hear ourselves think. The truth is, not everyone deserves access to your calm. When I started valuing quiet, some people took it personally. They thought I was pulling away, becoming distant, arrogant even. But I wasn't isolating myself, I was protecting something fragile and sacred, my clarity. I no longer wanted to be the person who said yes to every conversation, every demand, every storm that wasn't mine to weather. It was strange how quickly the world noticed. Some people drifted away, unable to exist in the silence that surrounded me. Others stayed, not because they needed my energy, but because they respected it. That's how I learned the difference between company and connection. One fills the room. The other fills the soul. Seneca once said that if you want friends, first become worthy of friendship. I never truly understood that until I stopped needing people to fill my emptiness. When you learn to be whole on your own, you stop attracting those who feed on weakness. You start meeting people who mirror your calm. They don't compete with your peace, they protect it. They don't demand that you explain your silence, they understand it. They don't seek to complete you because they're already complete themselves. That's the paradox of solitude. When you stop chasing, you begin attracting. It's almost mystical how the right people recognize the language of stillness. They appear not when you cry for company, but when you no longer need it. I remember meeting someone like that after months of choosing quiet. There was no spark, no explosion of excitement, just ease. We spoke little, but everything that needed to be said was understood. Their presence didn't disturb the silence. It deepened it. That was when I realized that peace has its own frequency, and only those who've earned their own can tune into yours. That's the fourth truth I learned. Stillness doesn't isolate you. It filters your world until only what's real remains. The right people won't pull you away from yourself. They'll sit beside you in the quiet, unafraid of it. They'll see your calm not as distance, but as depth. And when you find them, you'll know. Because there will be no noise, no performance, no pretending. Just a sense of home you didn't have to build by breaking yourself. So if your life feels quiet right now, don't rush to fill the silence. The right people will find you, not because you shouted the loudest, but because your peace called them softly. And when they come, you won't need to explain who you are. They'll already understand. Freedom doesn't arrive with noise, it comes quietly, disguised as solitude. I didn't realize it at first, but everything I had been chasing, the validation, the attention, the endless movement was just another way of running from myself. When life became quieter, I began to see how deeply I had depended on others to tell me who I was. Every compliment, every conversation, every message had become proof that I existed. And when it all stopped, I mistook the silence for loss. But it wasn't loss, it was liberation. For the first time, I could hear the sound of my own life again. Not the filtered version I showed the world, but the one that existed beneath it, the unedited, imperfect, honest one. There was something raw and beautiful in that stillness, like meeting yourself for the first time after years of pretending. I understood what Epictetus meant when he said, "No man is free who is not master of himself," because freedom isn't the ability to do whatever you want, it's the strength to remain unshaken no matter what happens. As the days passed, I started to notice a quiet confidence growing within me. It didn't come from achievements or approval, but from acceptance. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. The quiet moments that once terrified me became the space where I built resilience. I realized that I could lose people, plans, even dreams, and still be whole. That realization changes you. You stop chasing what runs and start nurturing what stays. Your peace, your integrity, your discipline. There was one morning when everything clicked. I woke before sunrise. The world was still asleep, the sky heavy with dawn. I sat by the window with a cup of coffee and just breathed. There was no music, no scrolling, no thoughts of what came next, just presence. And for the first time, I felt an unshakable calm. It wasn't joy or excitement. It was something deeper. It was mastery. It was knowing that even if everything else disappeared, I would still have enough within me to begin again. That's when I understood that solitude isn't the end of connection. It's the beginning of true relationship. Because once you know how to be at peace alone, you stop asking others to complete you. You no longer demand their constant attention or affection to feel alive. You become whole. And when whole meets whole, that's when love, friendship, and purpose stop being survival. They become freedom. So if you find yourself alone right now, don't rush to fill the silence. Let it do its work. Let it forge you. Stillness is not emptiness, it's strength under construction. The noise you once craved will one day feel small compared to the power of your own calm. Every quiet moment is shaping you into someone unmovable, someone free. And when the right people come into your life, they won't arrive to rescue you from loneliness. They'll recognize your peace because they've built their own. Together, you won't need to shout to be heard. You'll sit in silence and understand everything that words could never express. Feeling alone doesn't mean something's missing. It means you're finally meeting yourself. So don't run from the quiet, listen to it. It's calling you home. If these words found you today, subscribe to this channel, not for me, but for yourself. Because each video is a reminder of what the world forgets to teach, that the greatest strength is not in conquering others, but in mastering your own soul. Stay with me, and together we'll keep walking this stoic path toward peace, toward freedom, toward the calm that no one can take away.